guys. Welcome back to Two Perfect Podcasts. My name is Easel.
My name is Franz.
And we're not
Perfect.
No, we're not.
Two Perfect Podcasts is dedicated to three things.
First, we are dedicated to sharing super personal stories and owning our imperfection.
Second, we want to create a safe space where we can share our most authentic selves.
And third, we are intending to build a community for people like us who are fed up with the pressure of trying to be perfect. Forget that. But yeah, thank you guys for checking in. Make sure you follow, like, subscribe. Catch us on social media. We promise we're going to start posting eventually. We are Two Perfect Podcasts on Facebook, Instagram, and listen to us on all of, not all of it, but wherever you listen to your podcasts. And catch us on YouTube. Subscribe, turn on your notifications so you know we get new episodes every Tuesday. Yeah. So, today's episode is pretty special, I would say.
Yeah.
Because it's May. We are recording this in May. This is going to be released on the last Tuesday of May.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. No.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It's literally the last week.
It's the last Tuesday of May when this is going to be released. So we are dedicating this to culture, talking about culture, because as you may probably know, it is Asian American Heritage Month. And being Asian American ourselves, we feel it's important to discuss some, things that are going on in our brains about this month. And while it is pretty special, I would say, because of course it's supposed to celebrate Asian American heritage, there are just some questions that I want to pose because that's kind of my thing.
See what people think, if it's similar to how we feel.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
Why do you want to talk about this?
Why do I want to talk about this?
Yeah.
I think identity is really important, especially when you're an Asian American, because it could be very confusing. It was definitely for me growing up. So having this platform is really important for me because we get to discuss it and hopefully help someone along the way, or maybe even help me learn further about like what it means to be Asian American.
Yeah, and looking at our stats, we actually have some listeners from different parts of the world, which is really interesting.
I know.
And so I'm kind of excited to share this information, but also, if possible, get responses.
I'm a little anxious.
Yeah, but yes, definitely totally relatable, and I'm sure most, if not all, Asian Americans can relate to what you just said. And that's the whole point of our podcast, is really owning your sense of self. We say that all the time, but yeah, that's why we wanted to do this specific episode. When did you realize that, or I guess, what does being Asian American mean to you?
That's such a tricky question. I feel like growing up, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't see myself belonging in that category because, first of all, I was an immigrant. So I didn't even see myself as American. And secondly, I was also very conflicted on what it meant to be Asian because as a Filipino, I wasn't sure, like, there, in middle school, there was like that big debate. Oh, like, oh, we're not Asians, we're Pacific Islanders, but we're not Pacific Islanders, we're Asians. So it was very, very confusing for me.
You had that debate in middle school?
Yeah, because that's essentially when I got here. So everyone wanted to own up. They wanted to either belong to like a bigger class, either Asians or Pacific Islanders, and that was like the big debate in middle school. I remember, and even me, I was convinced like, oh, maybe we are Pacific Islanders because we're in the Pacific and we live in islands. But then people started to explain, it's like, no, you're not. Blah 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 blah. So very confusing time for me.
How do you feel about it now, in retrospect? Now that you're looking back,
now I think I'm just more like, ever since I started college, I just started to own it up. It's like, you know what? I am Asian. I do want to belong. I do want to be in that big umbrella of Asian American. I still don't really know what it means, but to me, it's just like adding voice to it, like making Filipinos part of that big umbrella. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. I am, I guess, assuming what you're meaning by what you're saying, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think, of course, there's a lot of like relatability because I also am an immigrant. I, moved to Los Angeles when I was 7 years old with my family, and prior to that, you're Filipino.
Yeah.
And I think the sentiment that we have with different Asian cultures in the Philippines is what makes us, like, or at least for me, when I moved here, I wanted to differentiate myself because of the sentiments I felt back in the islands, back in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Because back in the Philippines, there are beliefs and stereotypes of other Asian countries.
Yeah.
We perceive Chinese people, Korean people, Japanese people in a certain light back in the Philippines. And that's just, at least that was my upbringing. And so moving to America, where suddenly you're like lumped into this group, Asian American, with all of the countries that you perceive to be in a different way, that's when that struggle of like, well, it was, in my belief, we were different back in the Philippines. But now in America, everyone's telling us that, no, you're the same.
Yeah, you're Asian.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
To me, it makes sense too because
again, there are sentiments back in the Philippines, and it's just the way we grew up.
Kind of the same, where when you think of Asian, I don't know if Filipinos, especially Southeast Asians, maybe it's like also in that group where I feel like still the first thing you think of are East Asians when you say Asians because they're the bigger majority here. So actually what I wanted to say was like in the Philippines, that's also what we saw too, I believe. We saw Asians as like the Chinese, the Japanese, and that's who I also perceived as Asian. So when I got here, that's what I saw too. And that's also what the media was showing me who Asians were.
Because even when I moved here and people would tell me that, and, in questionnaires and whatnot that you have to fill out in school, your ethnicity or wherever you fill out those forms. I remember looking at that and being like, okay, I guess I bubble in Asian American.
Yeah.
Even though it's, as Renz was saying, like, I don't really know what that means.
Yeah.
Because it's not something we were ever raised to. It's not something we were raised to have a lot of pride in because there was such a big focus in being prideful, in being Filipino.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
And so that's an interesting thing, and not that anyone is better than the other or any of these titles. It's not about being better. It's just about feeling and what you identify with.
I think the reason why, and maybe I could be wrong, maybe I could be making it up, is because we've been colonized for so long that we wanted, maybe as a nation, to establish finally who we are. Like, let's reclaim that. Like, we're not just this, we're not just that, we're Filipinos. So I think that's maybe why it stems from, you know? Like, let's own it up.
Filipinos are some of the most prideful people you will ever meet. It's heavy with the Filipino pride. So
like when Pacquiao was like a big thing, like back then, it was a national holiday. Like everyone would gather and we will all watch it in pay-per-view. And it feels so, we celebrate everything.
We do. And I do agree with you in the fact that we were colonized for so long by different countries.
Not just one.
Not just one. That now we really want to establish this sense of individuality and this sense of pride. Because there is a lot to be prideful of. Right?
Yeah. I think too, when I was like growing up, part of what's really was conflicting to me being Asian American, because again, like the media, like, you know, the most represented was the East Asians. So to me, I'm not chinky. I'm sorry if that's not the proper term, but I was always, people didn't really call me Asian. Like everyone's like, no, you're not Asian. Like, you don't look Asian. Like, you're darker skin. Like, your eyes don't look Asian. And I'm just like, what the hell does that even mean? I don't understand. So that even, I think, made me feel like I'm not. But I didn't know what that was when I was younger, you know?
I actually am on the opposite spectrum. Which is so interesting because I do remember being a child in the Philippines and a lot of people making comments about how not Filipino I look. And I grew up with a lot of people telling me that I look Chinese, like I look like a Chinese baby. And I went to Hong Kong when I was maybe 5 or 6. And people were making jokes like, oh, you want to be careful. You want to stick close to your tita. Because I only went with my tita. And they're like, you want to stick close because someone might confuse you for, you know, a child that belongs there. Like, you don't want to get left behind in Hong Kong. And I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, because I don't look Filipino. Because that's all they tell me that I don't look like. And then even now, like my own people, they don't claim me. So with that, I feel that there's also this, I don't know if maybe there's like an extra effort to want to, anytime someone asks me, where are you from? Filipino. Like, I'm Filipino. Like, what's your ethnicity? Like, oh, or if anyone ever mistakes me for a different ethnicity, I'm very quick to correct them and be like, no, I'm Filipino. Like, that's it. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And they're like, oh, are you like half? Or are you like, you know, whatever, your ancestry? It's like, no. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, but
probably
I'm Filipino. So I don't know. It's
interesting.
It is interesting.
I feel like as people, we love to like categorize everything
because it allows us to simplify and it makes things easier for us to digest and experience the world if we can categorize other people. So Asian American Heritage Month. No, but in all seriousness though, I love that there is a push to celebrate heritage. There's a part of me that I don't even know how to formulate the words, but there's a part of me that feels like it's not enough.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel the same way with Black History Month.
Yeah.
I feel, that it's just...
Again, it's because it's like, it's good, definitely. Because, like, now we have something to celebrate, something to recognize us. But it's, as you said, it's an oversimplification. It's like lump summing a big continent into one thing, and we're all different identities.
We're so different.
Yeah.
There are so many differences that make each culture amazing.
Their own, yeah.
And their own.
Yeah.
And
I think that's why we should never feel content, because the more we feel strongly about something, the more representation we're going to get, and the more niche it's going to be, and the more it's going to feel personal for each ethnicities.
I look at that bird.
Oh my gosh!
I don't know when any of the other like celebrations are, like when
Me
is
too.
Korean American.
I'm too ignorant.
Heritage Month. Sorry. We're gonna get canceled for this.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Get canceled for this. It's supposed to be like celebrating, like, where we've
Please
come.
let us know. So I put it in our calendar. So that way we're becoming more enlightened each day. Please.
But yes, I do feel that to go back to what we were talking about prior, before I got distracted.
The bird.
Yeah.
Just cut it out. All right, start over.
I'm not gonna cut it out.
Just kidding.
Ooh, I lost my train of thought.
I lost it for you too. Oh my gosh.
Shoot, what was I saying?
Heritage.
I'm happy we have this, because of course we could not have it.
Which is what it was back in the day.
We could not have something celebratory, something to commemorate, or a month dedicated to commemorating, like, Asian Americans.
Yeah.
We could not have that, but we do have it. And that's something to be proud of and to be excited about, even though we still kind of struggle with, well, what does that even mean?
Yeah. Like, you can appreciate something even though you
struggle with it.
Yeah, yeah,
That's an interesting thing, because I feel that everybody must go through that, right? Does everybody go through that? I feel like there's something in everybody. It doesn't have to be being Asian American. It can be anything. It's really, there's a sense of appreciation of, like, what you have and being grateful for opportunities and whatnot. But then there's also this sense of, like, struggling to take in what you do have. Yeah. It's like a really weird balancing act.
I'm sure that's kind of how, like, the LGBTQ, like the ones on, like, the further end of the spectrum, felt before they got added into the labels, where it was just like lesbian and gay prides in the beginning, and then when they got added into, it feels like they're seen. So that's kind of how I feel about it, where I'm glad that we're starting to feel seen finally, but I still want to push forward more to actually, I don't know, I think I'm just waiting for that moment where I actually see myself in media, and it's or like in our society, where it's like, wow, that's me. I still haven't had, like, that moment. Maybe a couple times. I did really enjoy that, like, Disney short that they came out last Christmas. That was one of the better ones. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think everybody was, like, crying over that with, like, the Lola.
With the Lola, the Christmas. That was pretty spot on.
Yes, because everybody knows Lola is, like, the most important person in the family.
Yeah.
So, but I think to go off of, like, what you're talking about with, feeling like there could be more done with like representation and whatnot. I think what it is like so often people of color feel like sidelined, like secondhand citizens, like not enough of a priority in America as white Americans. And so when you dedicate a month to people, it almost feels as if like this is a cop out of what actually could be done. Why not include stories of us in the history books? Why don't we learn about, why is it not interwoven into the curriculum already? Because we've all been here for centuries. For centuries.
Yeah.
So, and we have put in work into building what this nation is all about. So there's that aspect of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the representation that goes hand in hand in all different facets, whether it be in the media or in public office or just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So, the question is, who is responsible for that?
For what?
Giving space. That's the real question, because it's like, yes, of course, I can think of so many different ways that we can uplift people of color, Asian Americans, or anyone, right? Yeah. But then it's like, who is in charge of creating space for those individuals that they didn't really have that space yet, right? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it falls. I think the easy answer is to say, like, it falls on us.
It is. Yeah.
It falls on not just us, but like the future generations that come from, that line.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's our battle to put ourselves in the narrative, unfortunately, because we're the only ones with this perspective. So no one else, like, people can make space for us to be like, okay, here's a project for you. And then that will add into the collection of voices and stories about our people. And that's basically the only thing we can do. Like, we just have to keep fighting and make sure that we get added as we go along the way.
And I think the interesting assumption, I would say, for most Asian Americans, and I'm already cringing at the fact that I'm saying this sentence, because
wait till you hear it when you edit it.
I'm cringing at the sentence because, again, there's this sense of like lumping us all together.
Yeah.
We are all fighting a different fight.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, even in the Asian American community, in the different ethnic groups that exist within that big general title, we all kind of have our own individual fights.
Yeah.
They can be similar, but definitely it's its own thing. But I feel that in general, the assumption is that Asian Americans are more often than not very quiet.
Yeah.
And very submissive and very much ready to live on the sidelines.
Yeah. We're okay to be comfortable. So I think that's part of it too. When in actuality, we need to be part of the conversations, That's the only way you get added in. That's the only way people will understand where you're coming from, where unfortunately, it's very stereotyped that like Asians are just meek, and we don't really care. But I think that's often like, because I remember my mom, what she was like super scared for when I got here was that I might like get in trouble just looking at someone like the wrong way. So she basically always like cautioned me to just be quiet and just to like not rattle any feathers up, And I think that's a very common attitude we have with everything.
Yeah. I could agree with that. But I understand a big reason why.
Yeah.
I think the biggest reason why my parents said things like that to me was because we wanted to stay in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if you did anything wrong in this country, you could be deported.
Yeah.
Like, it's like that, you know? So, that's what they told me specifically, because I did get into a lot of troubles. Especially in middle school, I started to get into like real trouble.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, you know, you're going down this path, but you don't understand. You're taking your existence here in this country for granted. Like, what you have here is not, you know,
it's a privilege.
It's a privilege. It's not a guaranteed spot for you to live in this country, because at that point in time, I wasn't a citizen yet.
Yeah.
And I was still just like a permanent resident.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, they could easily send you back.
Yeah.
And so the easy answer was like, don't get in trouble, don't step out of line, and don't say anything crazy, do anything crazy, because you want to stay here.
Yeah. But I wonder if that's attitude end up like getting carried along the way, you know, where that kind of becomes like the sentiment to everything else that we see. Because obviously it does make sense. And that's also why my mom was also scared for. But I just wonder how we all, not all, but there is that sentiment where we do just want to just be on the sidelines. And what does that even mean?
Sideline, what do you mean? Can you elaborate on that?
Sorry, I just had a brain fart.
Yeah. I think what you mean is being okay with just good enough.
That's good enough.
Yeah, being okay with just like good enough. Take what, you know, work for what you need, and just a little bit above that, you're fine.
Sure.
And not necessarily dreaming for the stars.
Yeah, I can see that. I think
Is
also
that what you mean?
that there's always like a sense of security we always want to put ourselves. You know, we always end up like becoming as nurses as Filipinos, you know, because that's a path already paved for us. So it feels safe.
Yeah.
So that's mostly what we do. So we don't dare to like run for politics or like actually try to be something else. And that's interesting for me too, because it's like that's kind of where real change happens, you know, when you put yourself in power. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a deep, deep situation, because then we're also looking into, or I guess the real situation there is, how could you think of putting yourself in places of power when you've just basically arrived? You know what I mean? It's not, that's not necessarily the way things work anywhere. Like, if you know, if you are hired by a company and it's like, you know, even like your second year, you're not going to be like, I'm running for CEO. You know what I mean? People are going to be like, excuse me, you know what you're doing. So, there's also that mindset, I think. And
that's interesting.
I think wishing your children work in something more stable, like nursing or something in the healthcare field and what have you, where you are going to get paid decently well, it's really just to feel like their kids. Those are for, the dreams to achieve like greatness. Those are for your kids.
That's so interesting. Now I want to know, because obviously I don't know a lot of Filipino Americans that is like third generation or fourth generation.
Exactly.
So I'm really curious at where, if that's who you are, if you know someone like that, where are they and
what are they doing and what is their upbringing like? Because I'm first generation?
1.5, I think.
1.5 generation?
Yeah, because you're like young enough where you're not.
I don't know.
Technically, I think that's what it is, 1.5.
Very early on. I mean, I wasn't even born here, right?
Yeah.
But so it's like, then my kids are first generation.
Second
generation.
Yeah. Your parents will be first. Technically, all of you guys are first, and that's why I'm saying you're 1.5.
Got it.
Because you got here super young. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, but I do know, I'm trying to think. I feel like I do have or know people who are like third generation, and their fights are different.
I agree.
Their life is different. Yeah.
I'm just really curious on like that perspective, because it's so different from mine. And also I wonder if there's a correlation, because like we're always seen as like the perpetual, like, what's that term? I just had it in the tip of my tongue and then I forgot it. Like everything else. We're just kind of like the perpetual foreigners, we're never seen as a citizen. Am I saying that right? Perpetual citizen?
How do you mean? Can you elaborate?
I think I read it in some articles, like when I was like in college, about like even if you are fourth year generation, they will always ask you, where are you really from? Like, it doesn't matter if they were born in like Chicago or New York or LA, they're always just going to be perceived as from somewhere else. So I wonder if that has any correlation, because you say too, like, we just started. So it's like, I wonder if they feel like they're also just starting because the nation doesn't see them as this is their home base. So
like
I'm just curious. So I wonder if that's also how they feel, or if that's how people make them feel. If that's something you can relate to, please let us know.
Yeah. I would say I know more East Asian Americans that are third generation, fourth generation.
Yeah.
That's more common in my experience, which now I'm realizing is also why I feel they're more interwoven into American society.
Makes sense.
Right? Yeah. Because guess what? They've been here longer. They have they had
a massive influx.
They have the opportunity, or have had more opportunities to have a bigger voice, right? Because then, anyways, I think you get what I'm saying.
I get it too. And I think also in like the Filipino community, it's very, when my parents talk about retirement, it's never like retirement here. They also don't, like, obviously they know LA is home, but Philippines is still home. Like, they still want to retire there. So I feel like usually for immigrants, they'll always like come here and then they'll also leave eventually. So it's really interesting.
I mean, I could understand that, because I can just imagine, like, my parents moved here in their 30s.
Yeah.
Late 30s? Mid 30s? I don't remember. So I can just imagine me, right, if I left America in my late 30s. I don't know.
Right.
If I moved to a different country to raise my kids so that they can have a better opportunity, it's like, okay, like, so much of my formative years and so much of myself I left behind in that place, you know? Because I feel like even in like your early years, your teens, your 20s, the things that happen as your first time, it leaves such a big impact.
Of course.
Your first heartbreak, it leaves such a big impact in your mind. It almost feels like it's going to be the worst heartbreak of your life. Yeah. Because your second heartbreak, your third heartbreak, or what have you, it doesn't feel as bad almost because you've got the experience.
You know you could go through it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so because your first time has left such a big impact in your feelings, in your mind, and emotionally and all that, you know, you have a bigger connection to where those first times took place. Potentially. I don't know. These are all just theories. Yeah. I'm talking out my ass. See.
But do you know if your parents want to retire in the Philippines or retire here?
Yes. I do believe they want to retire in the Philippines. Your money just goes a lot longer there, you know? It's a lot cheaper. I'm pretty sure they both have properties in the Philippines already, so it just makes things easier to, you know. But, yeah, they've discussed that because, I don't know, but the thing that really holds them is, you know, children.
Family.
Yeah. Their children.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah, me too. Same. My mom is very conflicted with what she wants because obviously she is always making me feel a type of way. It's like, oh, it's not like anyone's going to inherit my property there because she knows that, you know, I'm not going to live there. Yeah. I'll visit and she'll visit and then we'll just do that. But it's interesting.
It is very interesting. So I have a more serious question for you.
Okay.
Being that it is Asian American Heritage Month, and yes, very happy we already discussed that.
If you can't see it in our face.
A rise in Asian American hate crimes.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, there is a lot of talk. Not that I'm in these circles. I had a conversation with somebody else about this, just like one time, but I've never had any conversations about this any other times. But they were saying that like there are people out there that believe that it's not real. The focus of the media highlighting these crimes as anti-Asian hate crimes.
It's just actually crime.
It's just a ploy. And so, like a media ploy, I don't really know.
Media ploy.
I didn't have the conversation with the person.
Yeah.
It was just a conversation. But anyways,
that's interesting.
There's that aspect to it. And then there's also the aspect of making the comparison where, you know, there's that bill that I think the president still needs to sign. I don't know if he signed off on it yet, but it is a response to the anti-Asian hate crimes, right?
Yeah.
That bill to protect, right? Asian Americans, basically. And there have been people who've commented like, well, what about Black Americans? Why have we not had any of these bills passed? And look at all of the crimes that are happening for centuries.
Forever, yeah.
So those are two topics that I wanted to discuss. So it is going to get a little deep.
I know.
Warning, trigger warning. You're like, oh my God, I'm not ready.
I'm never ready, but it's okay. It's fine.
But yeah, what do you think about the first sentence of like, you know, media ploy? Like, it can't all be like.
That's interesting, you know. That's interesting. I'm curious on what they think the ploy, like, if it's not that, then what is it to them? So I'm really curious on what they mean by that.
That potentially they're just individual situations and not necessarily about being Asian.
Yes, yeah. I got that part, but it's like, okay, then what is the media trying to incite?
Clicks.
Just, oh, okay. So just for virals?
Views, yeah.
I mean, I think that's always going to be an aspect of things, but doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. And just because that they are like instances that's happening, we still have to see it as a whole. Then why is there a rise? Like that's still true. So to me, like even though that some parts of what they're saying is valid, maybe because it's too personal for me that I just can't separate myself and just be quick to like, okay, I see your point. Like just because I kind of see their point, I'm not just gonna totally agree with it because I still see it as like, like it's the response people are having because of the fear, because of the current climate that we have right now, that this is how just some people want to retaliate, So to me, it's just like, it's just weird to say that it was just for clicks. Because again, that kind of minimizes the attacks that's happening and the damage that's happening in the community. So that's kind of like what I think of it on that first sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
I can see the logic.
Yeah.
That they're trying to make because, of course, we are we're driven by consumerism. Clicks and views, that is everything. And so, yes, there is that side of it. Always. There's always that side of it. However, I don't think, like what you're saying, I don't think that means we shouldn't look into it as like a bigger thing because there is anti-Asian sentiment. There's always been anti-Asian sentiment.
Yeah.
Anti-Asian sentiment has been around for centuries.
Since the first Asian got here.
So, exactly. And so that is not something easily dismantled because there's never really been a big effort to dismantle that sentiment. That's never.
First of all, it's usually not in the news, so that's why it's like no one is reacting. So now it's like at least like there's. I love that there's at least a movement. We're moving forward to be able to protect our community.
So that leads me to the next sentence of people commenting about, okay, it feels a little unfair that it was so quick to protect the Asian community. Why is it driven that way? But when we have, Black Lives Matter and protecting the Black community, where is that?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's always that clash, when you feel like your community has been under attack for so long and then you see another community, you almost feel like, what the hell? What like as you said, what about us? So I totally agree with them. It in like the most simplest form of saying it is slightly unfair because something should be done. It took forever to get one cop convicted. So or even just arrested, right? So I agree with them.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no
I don't think it should be a competition. We should all be protected.
There is no argument against that. That's an agreeable thing. And anyways, we got through this topic without getting too heavy because I also don't want to get extremely political in this channel because it's not I don't want that to overtake the channel, especially at a time like this where it's like politically, it is just such a weird time that we live in. It is such a weird time that we live in.
And we're
Anyways.
obviously like not the experts
Mhm.
in this thing, so to me it's like I don't know the solution.
How would you, on a lighter note,
Yeah.
on a lighter note, how would you celebrate Asian American Heritage Month?
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't know. I always just celebrate it the way I always do, which is through food. But I do wish that like we're able to
We
have.
should have done that as a series.
It's okay. We'll do it for the Filipino month.
Yeah. Okay. Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I wish we were able to have like small parades, or maybe even have like a little small like festival. Hopefully like in the future once it's safe and stuff, that could be something that we could do because like I was born in the Philippines and I was there for like 10 years, but I wish I got to know more of my like pre-colonial identity, or even just like even just like some of like the Spanish influenced identity. Like I don't really know anything about it. I've never done a tinikling. Maybe I've dressed up in a Filipino outfit once, but I'm pretty sure that was for like a nationality contest or something like that. So it wasn't even to celebrate like my culture. So that's something I would want to do, like actually learn, or maybe even like cook in like a sampalo or like in one of those like cooking pots. So that would be cool.
You saying that competition piece just reminded me of something. In college, in Florida, there was a competition. Oh, I don't remember what it was called. I don't want to say it's like Miss Blank.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
different ethnic backgrounds, and there's also the male version of it too. And they compete separately, and they do basically highlight their culture.
Yeah.
And they have different pieces, just like a pageant would, where they highlight and they put on like presentations, and it's a showcase. And then at the end there's a vote for who did the best, and so it'd be like and someone nominated me. And you have to be nominated in order to compete.
Yeah.
And they nominated me to compete as Miss Philippines, and I turned it down because I was just like, I know I was doing way too much in college, but I was just like,
no,
I don't know if I am the candidate to represent my country. But it was really cool.
Yeah.
Most of the time they're Caribbean islands because it's Florida, so there are a lot of Caribbean folk.
Yeah.
So but it's always such a really fun experience because you're learning about their culture, and you're learning about the way they're representing their culture. They sometimes sing or dance, and they have songs that they create, and like they
so
make a beautiful
cool.
set. They have the traditional garb that they wear, and they have like different outfits, and it's really fun. It's really cool. And so with like parades, that'd be really cool. Imagine if we like spearheaded that.
I know, like in Filipino town, bro.
Dude, I think we could do it.
Let's do it. Everyone,
you're invited. We're gonna be there.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist yet, but maybe in the future that would be really cool if we did like a Filipino parade.
Yeah.
That is awesome. New York City has lots of that. They're really good with having celebrations because obviously it's New York City, so there's so many different cultures that live there, and they all have different parades and whatnot.
Right?
Yeah, so that would be really cool if LA had that. Food, like you said, I think that is one of the best ways to celebrate other cultures is just checking out food. Asian American Heritage Month, specifically, supporting other Asian American businesses, going to restaurants, or just other businesses in general, clothing stores, what have you. That's always a good way. Reading literature.
Yeah.
Reading literature written by Asian Americans, watching pieces directed and written by Asian Americans. That's always a great way. And these are, of course, ways you can celebrate any culture. If it's Black History Month, do the same thing for Black Americans, but also not keeping that just to a month.
Exactly. Do it every day.
Doing it all the time. Yeah. And just branching out and seeing what's out there.
Yeah, because that's how you really get to know people and where real diversity starts to really happen.
Absolutely. Because it's the same way if you were to visit a different country, if you were to visit, you're going to try their food, you're going to speak to the people, you're going to learn about them and go to their museums and learn about their history and stuff like that. At least that's what I like to do when I visit other countries. Some people, they just like to party, which is also a great way. Yeah. You can party with us.
Yeah, because that's how you also get to know the people.
That is a great way to get to know people is partying, with them.
Go to the Philippines, do karaoke.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Asian American Heritage Month, great thing. Definitely something to expand on, even more so. And
I agree. Never be complacent.
Never. As we say.
I know.
And then we're going to go take a nap after this.
Facts.
I'm sleeping. Anyways, I think this was a fun episode.
This was. Yeah. I loved it.
You feel good about it?
Yeah, it made me feel more proud to be Asian American.
What does that mean?
I know, I was literally going to say that to you.
Because it's like, yes, there's a sense of like pride. Yeah. Like, yes, it's something that was given to me. That's the thing. It's like someone is giving you this title and then you're kind of learning to grapple with it. You're learning to appreciate it for what it is because you yourself, you've never given yourself that title.
Yeah.
Because you've always seen yourself as Filipino.
Something else, yeah.
Yeah, and then even that's a whole different thing, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about in October, which is Filipino American Heritage Month specifically. So stay tuned for that. Anyways, we are rambling.
Yes.
That's what we love to do. We hope you guys enjoyed the ramble. And stay tuned for more rambling. We're going to change our name to Rambling.
I know, that should have been it.
I know.
Ramble and ramble.
Ramble.
2 rambles.
We're doing the outro now?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, guys. I feel like there's something I missed. Did I miss something?
Good enough.
I feel like there's something that I wanted to include in this episode that it's going to bug me. I know as soon as I turn off the recording and the camera, I'm going to be like, ooh, that's what it was.
Turn it back on. Then it's not good.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, celebrate life, celebrate culture. Celebrate each other, celebrate yourself. Yes. And in order for you to do that, you got to follow us, like us. No, I'm kidding. No, but
a little bit.
Follow us, like us, subscribe, watch it with your friends and family. Find us on YouTube, 2 Perfect Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, 2 Perfect Podcast. Email us, 2perfectpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on pretty much every podcast streaming platform available. New episodes out every Tuesday. We hope you guys enjoyed this very special episode, and thank you for being yourself and checking in with us. We love you. We'll see you later. Peace out.
Bye. I have to poop.